So, you finished your first run of Tactics Ogre Reborn. You beat the big boss, characters had touching moments, and the credits rolled. Yet you're missing some stuff. Who are all these other characters people are talking about? What's with this world system? What the heck is a coda, and who's this alluring singer that I'm now hearing about? Well, that's step 1 of your post-game journey, my friend. Today, we're talking about how to recruit Iuria Songstress. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. If you've been enjoying my content, finding it fun, entertaining, or educational, please subscribe. I'm pushing for 15k subs by the end of the year, and I could use all the help I can get. Thank you. Also, it's Friday, which means I need to thank my supporters. So, from Patreon, thank you to Caffeine System, Killer Cake, 18C, Mike Ridings, Neo Darkness Bahamut, Shanur Islam, Kejo, Kieran Ross Day, and FV. And from my YouTube members, thank you so very much to Killer Cake, Canadian Animator Guy, IR Fine, Schnorble, Angel Plushie, Star Phoenix, Tojo Jr., Federico, Brand Solar One, Midday Moonlight, Luxor, Caffeine System, Tenchi, Matthew Berry, Retroclips, Vanguard Commander, Jason T131, William L, Red Eyed Dragonfly, Hellzark, King Tony, Roctopudge, John Eaton, X13, Captain Planet, Arbitrary Librarian, Daniel Bellisley, James Grieve, Avery Bailey, Christian Chapman, 0451 Jim, Light B, The Incompletionist, Solu, Sulfaneer, Sweet Monkey Juice, Edward McCart, Michael Poole, Naomi Uyama, Azure Leon, Black 51, Isaac Dymock, and Ramfrost. I'm getting better at that. Guys, seriously, thank you all so much. You are absolutely the reason that I've made it this far on YouTube, whether you've been a YouTube member or a patron or whatever else. This one goes out to all y'all. Thank you again. Now on to the topic. You'd be forgiven for thinking that you didn't have more side quests to do and characters to unlock after beating the final boss of a game. It is the final boss, after all. But that's not how Tactics Ogre Reborn rolls. In fact, the game is so ready to show you what it has to offer that as soon as the credits are over, it plops you right back on the world map and says, hey, look at all this other cool stuff you can do. If you feel overwhelmed by that, don't worry. Even I was at first. Before you get sucked into time travel and alternate realities and all that nonsense, though, there's a relatively simple task ahead of you. A new recruit and a powerful support class to get your hands on. There's a quick requirement to note before you head off here. Make sure that Canopus and Gildus are alive and in your party. Both characters have a role to play in the coming story bits, and I imagine you'll run into issues if they're not with you. Better to be safe than sorry. So, to get started, as always, head to the Warren Report. There you'll find an entry titled The Songstress of Omish, which discusses an uncommon sight in Valeria, a female winged, and a singer at that. After you read this entry, you'll want to ensure that Denim, Gildus, and Canopus are equipped and ready for battle, then head to Port Omish. There, some cutscenes will play, and you will immediately be thrown into battle with no chance to prepare. You'll be facing a veritable army of ruffians and pirates with only Denim, Gildus, and Canopus, so form up as best you can to have the lads cover each other's flanks. Your only goal is to survive and defeat all the enemies, and if you feel like you're going to be overwhelmed, you'll be given the option to escape. Keep choosing dialogue options that have the team show remorse for getting each other into this scrape, and you will eventually have the chance to choose to leave. Or you could just not and go knock some heads to get some drops. The choice is yours, really. Once you're done one way or the other, you'll notice that the pirate's graveyard is closed. Weird. Check the Warren Report once again, and a new entry titled Iuria's Requiem should have appeared. Read it, close the report, then reopen it. Another entry will have appeared, this one titled Iuria's Secret. Strange. Read that report, and suddenly the pirate's graveyard will reappear. Odd. Well, there's only one thing to do when happenings are weird, strange, and odd, and that's go investigate. If you haven't already, it's not a bad idea to get your team leveled a bit, as the post-game level cap is 45, and the graveyard fights can get tough on this side quest. In the dungeon, you'll need to figure out how to get to the bottom floors, choosing to enter the map called Into the Darkness at the end. Make your way down, enjoying the various scenes with Iuria, and maybe picking up a lich or two along the way, until you get to the final level. In this final fight, you'll be faced with a number of upgraded enemy units that you typically see in the Palace of the Dead, including a squad of Fusiliers on the cliffs. While it looks scary, all you have to do is down Iuria and the battle will be over. Pack your best AoE spells to nuke groups of enemies and make room for you to get to the boss, and be wary of Iuria casting Summon Darkness to slow you down. Seeing as how you had to handle the final boss to get to this point, I'm sure you can manage. Once you do so, after the dust clears, Iuria will join you. Iuria has a lot of potential due to a mix of her base stats and racial attributes and her semi-unique class options. She's decently fast, being in the same tier as Saria and Sistina when comparing RT, and just below Lyndall, Olivia, and Sherry. She's also the only other unique winged besides her brother Canopus, allowing her to put her lower RT to use with high flying mobility. Iuria joins up in the semi-unique Songstress class, one of, if not the best support classes in the game, and is also the last character that you can get who can be switched to Shaman, rounding out the list alongside the Farena sisters and Deneb. All told, she's a phenomenal unit with plenty of build potential. We'll start by discussing Songstress and its capabilities, then we're going to hit up Shaman. Songstress takes the idea of the Swordmaster's dance spells and absolutely runs with it, or maybe flies with it in Iuria's case. You've got AoE buffs, debuffs, healing, and MP restoration, and those are the name of the game here. Songstresses can equip the following gear: knives, instruments, whips, hammers, Caldia only, and cudgels in the form of mage staves. They can also use small shields like the buckler and balder shield. For armor, it's a bit of an eclectic mix. For headgear, we have medium armor like the balder helmet alongside mage gear like the wizard hat. For the body, we have medium armor like Damascus gear and wormscale armor. Arm guards are exclusively leather gloves in the stinky set, and leg guards are a mix of light and medium armor. Instruments are the particular equipment of note here, as not only do they make for decent bludgeoning melee weapons, but each one also comes with 5 casts of one of the various songs. Let's go over those next. It turns out that in a contest between song and dance, dance loses out every time. Songs are stacked with power, each one having a useful effect. Iuria comes equipped with 2 right off the bat. You can buy 2 more from Deneb's shop after you reach Coda 2, and the rest must be found as drops from the Sandbronsa ruins. Each song hits a huge 3-square radius area around the Songstress, and they typically cost between 30 and 40 MP. The ones I have access to thus far, i.e. the ones you can get before going to Sandbronsa, are Ardent Conga, granting Spellcraft and 25-ish MP to all allies in range, Stirring Fulcor, granting Healcraft to all allies in range, Weakening Jarapo, weakening all enemies in range, and Taunting Mambo, staggering all enemy units. The 2 instruments I've been able to get thus far are the Pandario, Iuria's starting weapon, which offers 5 casts of Ardent Conga, and Gerza's Atabak, offering 5 casts of Stirring Fulcor. Both good offerings, but Pandario and its free MP and magic damage is just truly the superior option. It's really disgusting. For skills, Songstress gets 2 unique options, both enhancing their songs. The first is Autoskill Resounding Voice, which increases the already huge range of songs to truly girthy levels by granting them an extra point of range when active, bumping it from a radius of 3 to 4. Truly, our cups runneth over with bounty. Then we have Autoskill Echoing Voice, which doubles the duration of songs. I've been testing this where I can, and if I have it wrong, please let me know, but it seems that this means that the actual status effect of any given song in question is doubled. Enemies remain weakened for longer, allies keep spellcraft for a greater duration, etc., etc. Beyond these 2 skills, Iuria gets Recruit Human and Meditate 2. Nothing special, but pretty much all the class needs, all the same, really. All you need is that Pandario for spellcraft and MP spam, and you're set, if we're going to be completely honest here. Just keep your Songstress's RT down to make sure they go before the rest of your team, and watch the buffs fly. Oh, and I should note that Pumpkinheads can also become Songstresses, which is useful, as Iuria's, strictly speaking, quote-unquote best class probably isn't even Songstress, instead, arguably being Shaman. If you don't know what Shaman is or what it does, you can check out my guide about it here, which is linked below. It'll tell you how to unlock the class and how best to use it, and is generally worth the watch. If you need to, go watch that, then come back to this video. Shaman is at the top of the totem pole in terms of magical damage output, rivaled only by Lich in raw destructive potential. Focusing on the use of summons and the legendary Apocrypha magic, this class is all about the elements, infusing themselves and allies with elemental affinity, debuffing the enemy's resistances to the elements, and buffing their own spell damage output periodically. However, this power is limited, with only 6 characters in the game allowed to wield it, and as previously mentioned, Iuria is one of them. In a purely min-maxed world, this means it's imperative that you switch Iuria to Shaman, as you want to be able to use as many of these devastating casters as you can. Although I'll argue that there might be a case to actually keep Iuria as a Songstress. I haven't tested it fully, but there's something there. That said, Iuria is especially great as a Shaman, since she will always have the ability to fly, freeing up her accessory slot for a damage-boosting accessory when in places like the Palace of the Dead, where death pits are common, and other units want winged rings and the like. And really, just having more devastating damage and a Shaman who isn't locked into an element like the Farina Sisters to fill elemental coverage is inarguably strong. I'm not going to go over a full build of Shaman here, as the build I outlined in my dedicated Shaman video will work just as well. For a quick and dirty suggestion, all you really need is the following skill loadout. Your weapon skill of choice, likely Cudgels, Engulf 2, Meditate 4, and Nature's Touch. This basic skill set will maximize damage and range for your spells of choice, while ensuring you have the mana to use them. As I mentioned before, Iuria isn't locked to an element in Shaman like the sisters are, so you're able to make use of whatever element you want to with her, and match her spell loadout accordingly. While I know I've talked at length about the strength of Shaman and how it's likely Iuria's best pick for a class, strictly statistically speaking, I personally find it quite boring. We've had plenty of time to discuss Shaman just as a whole, so instead I'd like to dedicate a little time in the video to a closer look at Songstress, as it is really, honestly, also a wild time to use. I know I stated it before, but seriously, it's just so dumb how good Songstress is, even with its base kit. I really enjoy it. Also, while Pumpkin Golems can be Songstresses, they don't get the naturally low RT that Iuria gets as a unique unit. So I do think that there's some merit to keeping her as a Songstress. After all, the best part of this build is the free buff potential at the start of the fight. Here's what I've got going on for my MP Battery Iuria build. Starting off, as always, with our equipment, this is unarguably the most important section we have. First off, a basic, unforged Balder Dagger. This is here for 2 reasons: parry, and access to dagger finishers, which Iuria can do surprising amounts of damage with. Next, we have her basic starting Pandiro. Pandiro? Not really sure on that one. Anyway, we have her basic starting instrument, which funnily enough also has parry, but more importantly, gives that 5 free uses of the Ardent Conga spell, which, again, grants around 25 MP and spellcraft to all enemies in a 4-range area, including Iuria herself. Realistically, this is all she really needs, because it's absolutely disgustingly busted, but let's continue. I have a wizard's hat, worm scale armor, leather gloves, and chain leggings, all +1, granting Iuria some decent defenses, which are made all the better by her Conso earring and its +5 to resistance against all enemy types. The thing to note here is that even with all this gear, Iuria is at a measly 89 RT, meaning she's guaranteed to go before any unit in my army other than monsters and dragons. I can now always guarantee that my entire party starts the battle with +25-ish mana and spellcraft in every fight forever. It's truly mad. For items, all you really care about is some healing and res stuff, although even that isn't likely going to matter since you'll be spending your first 5 turns or so casting free Ardent Congas and dropping finishers when needed. Speaking of finishers, let's jump forward to our skills really quick. Make sure you pack your weapon skill, as always, here being knives and instruments. Then we have the 2 skills that should only be relevant in protracted battles, Resounding and Echoing Voice. As we already discussed, these just serve to make our songs have an even greater range and duration, which in most fights won't really be necessary, but it doesn't hurt to have. Finally, we have our spells, and we only have 2 equipped here, as they're the only 2 that I've actually bothered to pick up. I could get the 2 from Deneb's shop, but it's really not necessary for this build. We have Ardent Conga, again, and then Stirring Folklore. Honestly, if you've used up all 5 uses of your weapons built in Ardent Conga, I can't see the battle going much longer to need the actual cast, but your skills will only improve the spell version, so there's some potential edge case use here. Stirring Folklore isn't going to see much use either, but I can see it being helpful in situations like the final boss fight to buff your healers if you're going for a major heal 2 strat to keep your party alive all the easier. Will this only be relevant on future runs where you've already beaten the game and thus have Iuria? Yes. But there might be a few times in the Coda content that it'll also be useful. I don't want to spoil it, but you know. Again though, these casts really are only here as backup. As I unlock more songs, I'll add them in, but at base, the build works perfectly well, even if you don't equip any songs. Normally, I'd add some gameplay tips here, some strategy discussion, use cases, and the like, but really, I already mentioned what needed to be done. You start a battle with Iuria in the middle of the formation, she goes first, you cast Ardent Conga, then push forward. Every turn, you cast Ardent Conga again, pushing forward with your front line until they're in finisher range, and all the while your casters should be pasting the enemy with the extra mana and spellcraft, allowing your melees to move up, then use finishers to mop up whatever dregs have survived the elemental barrage. That's it, that's the build! You'll paste all but the toughest maps using Iuria in this way, and I'd argue it's what's worth keeping her as a songstress for this forward barrage alone. Using all 5 of the other shamans alongside her means that they're casting sooner and hitting harder for literally 0 cost. It's great. And again, before anyone says, but Pumpkinheads, look at this. With the same exact equipment, Pumpkinmeyer has 97 RT, making it slower than my shamans and a good chunk of the rest of my army as well. It's not ideal, and while these little gourd-headed lads can certainly make good backup singers, they aren't living up to the main act that is Iuria for this build specifically. All told, it makes sense that you can't access Iuria and Songstress until after the main story. To say she's broken would be an understatement, and while there's plenty of content in the Coda chapters to warrant that level of player power, she would shatter the balance of the base game like an old guitar at a metal show. Songstress is an absolute blast, and Shaman with flying makes an already silly class even sillier. And of course, this is to say nothing of Iuria's potential in other classes too, as just like with her brother, natural flying and the unique RT reduction equals some truly fun crafting. If you have such a build that you'd like to share, please do. I always love seeing what wacky stuff y'all have come up with. But that said, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all for watching. Have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.